Hello, my name is Roy Osherove, and I'm the author of The Art of Unit Testing. Obviously, I don't look so great right now because it's the middle of the night. However, I feel in a geeky mood, so I thought I'd review some of the tests that are in NerdDinner. And NerdDinner is basically the project. It's an open source project which tries to show the beauties of the ASP.NET MVC stuff. I'm not a great MVC geek, however, I am quite comfortable with looking at tests, so I thought I'd do a quick test review and say what I think about the tests here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go through these. This is one of the first times I've ever seen these. I've maybe just glanced over it a little bit, and I'm just going to say out loud what I think. Now, I do realize I kind of look weird with this stuff on, and I guess you're going to have to get used to it. Okay, let's start. So, one of the first things that I like about this is the fact that there is the project here in NerdDinner, and then there's NerdDinner.tests. Now that's good because the tests are organized in a specific manner. Now I'm assuming these are only unit tests. There are no integration tests. If there were, I would expect them to be either in a different project with a different name, say nerdinner.integration.tests or test.integration, or at least in a separate folder. Now, what about the folders? I like the fact that the folders are grouped together quite nicely. There's a folder for controllers. There's a folder for fakes, which are probably various stubs or mocks that are used throughout the tests. And then there's a folder for models, which only contains one class, which are probably the tests for dinner. Now what I don't like is the fact that this is actually called dinner test and not dinner tests, because I'm pretty sure it contains more than one test. Yes, it does. Now the fact that I'm using ReSharper, by the way, if I'm going to do a quick code review, ReSharper already tells me that there's some stuff that's not used here. Like I could get rid of the using here very, very easily. So I can tell that the person who wrote these tests did not use ReSharper. Now, not using ReSharper is not like a mortal sin, but it does help in some specific manners. Okay, so what else did we have here? Let's talk about, well, since we're here, let's talk about the tests themselves. NerdDinner test.models. It's a class called dinner test. I would probably rename it to dinner tests. And of course, because this is my first time, I'm kind of excited. Let's talk about the naming here. And this is a classic naming from the school of thought of the Jean-Paul Boudou school of thought, if you will. A dinner should not be valid when some property is incorrect. Now, there's things I like about this, there are things I don't like. First of all, it's much better than the regular names that people will usually give their tests, such as test 1, or some people will just name it test dinner, or test valid, or test properties incorrect, or something. Now, I believe that for a test name to be good enough, it should contain 3 things. What you're testing, probably the name of a method or something. The scenario under which you're testing. In this case, the scenario is known. When some properties are incorrect, this is the scenario. And the expected result, which is should not be valid. So this test does answer these 3 things, I think. So it tests dinner, obviously. However, the way I name things is I'm actually testing the isValid method. I'm going to do an underscore here. Scenario is incorrect properties, and the expected behavior is should be false. So what's the difference here? Obviously it kind of says the same thing, but there's one big difference. First of all, it's structured, and structure for me is good because it's much easier for me to teach people to do these things, that there are these 3 things and they're separated with underscores. Also very helpful when you talk about IntelliSense, so I can see all the tests for isValid here. So everything should be starting with isValid. And it's easier to understand because there is a naming convention. So I can always tell that the middle part is what's the scenario. Now with the other naming convention, I would just have to read the whole sentence, which can be not only is it pretty long, it's just kind of confusing to me. I'm not that crazy about it. Okay, let's talk about the way these tests are written. Now, every test usually have these three parts: arrange, act, and assert. And I'm really happy that someone actually put in a comment that says, this is the arrange, this is the act, and this is the assert. Thank you very much. Obviously, I didn't know this was an assert, because this doesn't tell me it's an assert. And of course, I'm being cynical here because it is 2 a.m. However, I'm not sure if these comments are here specifically for the purpose of newbies looking into the test, in which case I guess it's okay, or if they're here because when someone wrote these tests they were actually teaching someone else, which is also okay, or they think we're dumb, which is not that great. However, I'm pretty sure the guys, the Goo, the Hanselman, and all these guys, they know what they're doing, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I have no problem with this, and I don't want to be picky, so I'm just going to continue on. So what does it do? It creates a dinner with new dinner. Title is a test title, country USA, and contact phone is bogus. So I have one interesting thing to say about this. The name of the test used to be some properties are invalid. So how do I know which of the properties that are used here are the ones who should not be valid? Is it only the contact phone? Is it the country as well? Is it the test title? I'm inclined to think it's the contact phone because it says bogus. In which case, why do I need to set the title? And if the title does need to be set, then I would use not a magic string, because this is still a magic string. I would use a string that tells me, okay, title, okay, country, or if this is, I would say, okay, and okay, and then it should say is valid. Now, another interesting thing here is that I don't even know how many things could make it invalid. I'm pretty sure this is not the only property that can make things invalid. So if I look at this, if I actually go and look, it gets the rule violations and says count equals 0. Now, what's the rule violation? Oh, man. So I can see a whole bunch of logic here, but none of that logic is tested. In fact, I think only this logic is being tested. It should be is null or empty. And, actually not even that one, just this phone. So there are two ways to go about this, to think about this. This was probably not written in a test-driven manner. Otherwise, we would have good coverage for this. And whoever wrote the tests feels like what they should have done is at least go through over all the rules there, or at least a couple of them. But there are only two tests here. One that says all the properties are correct. And again, I have a problem with this test as well. I'll explain in a second. And then they have just one more to explain how to write a test for it. So these are not good examples for tests on the dinner stuff, because they're missing a lot of tests. Now this is just something which I might show later. But for now, what's important to show is that there are only two tests here. And that sucks. Okay, what problems do you have here? I have magic strings all around. Now, what's the problem with magic strings in tests? Well, one of the main problems with magic strings in tests is that you should just imagine the face of the person who's reading the test who's never seen this test before. So they're looking at the test and they're saying, so countries USA, and contact phone is 45703-8072. And then they would ask themselves, But why in this test is contact phone 457038072? Is that the only logical phone there is? Why is it hard-coded? Are there more logical phones? What about the latitude and longitude? Are these all magic values? I mean, where do I get these magic values from? I'm pretty sure what you're going to have is you're going to have all the tests using these same values, which could actually have a bug in them. So you either use consts or use the simplest values possible to make things work. So test title doesn't actually need to be test title. It could be A. Description could be A. Daytime could be minimum. And why am I putting minimum here? Because event date equals now. Now changes every time. At the very least, use a fixed date, which is always true. Because otherwise what you're going to have here is a test that always changes every time you run it. It runs with a different date time. So maybe now it runs, but maybe 2 years from now, in a leap year or whatever, it's just going to fail once. And then it's just going to pass again. No one will know what the problem is, and so on and so on. So you want tests that are repeatable, that are always repeatable. Nothing changes in them. Everything is hard-coded, and daytime here is not hard-coded. And again, thank you very much for telling me that there is an assert here. So this should be valid. What else is there? Okay, let's look at other tests. So we have the controller tests here. Let's look at the account controller tests. Already I can see that this is not needed. Change password, get return view. Interesting thing, have you noticed that the names of the tests are very different? So we used to have a very long name with a different standard here. So this used to be the standard, and now I have this one. So change password, get returns view. The name is not great. Change password, get returns view. I'm not sure what this is testing. I think that what's supposed to happen is it returns a view. But on the other hand, check out what's happening right here in the assert. It's actually checking that the view data of some string is 6. Now, this is a very, very problematic test. The reason this is a problematic test is, well, this is a magic test, if you will. I'm creating some account controller. I don't know how it's configured. I'm creating some calling change password, getting back a view result, and then somehow magically the password length in the view should be 6. Now there are several ways to think about this. What I think actually happened here is that someone says, let's just to make sure this is the right view, the default password length in the view should be 6, or the view data. That doesn't mean anything. That's a different kind of test. That's like a sanity test. But what you're actually trying to do here is to test it. You're getting back a view result. Maybe what you should be getting, maybe what you should be testing is that the view result is of a specific type. Let's look at change password for a second. Returns view, and the view is change password. It's setting the view data of password length. Oh man. Here's what I think the test should have been doing. There are several things to test here, but one of the logical things happening here is that it sets the password length in the view data to the membership minimum password length. So what I want to be able to do is to say that this is not 6, this is this. So somehow I would need to get this value, and I'm not going to start explaining how you can do that, because you can obviously expose this kind of stuff. Because otherwise, I want the test, the 6 not to be a magic number here. I want it to be exactly what's supposed to happen here. So I might need to find a way to fake or to stub the membership service with the minimum password length. Now, I've already kind of looked earlier, which when you weren't looking, at how the membership service is built. And one of the things I can actually tell you here is that if I actually look for the number 6 here, as I say, find in files and so on, there are several things that can go on here. Let's say that I'm saying, well, Visual Studio is acting kind of strange. I'm just gonna hold that thought for a second. If I say get account controller, this is a helper method here. And just look at this beauty. This is a monster. What it creates is probably some kind of stub, fake controller, or whatever, and it initializes it with all kind of stuff, like a mock membership provider. And I just want to tell you that this is not a mock membership provider. This is a stub membership provider, because you're probably not going to assert anything against it, that it gets called properly. You're going to check. You're going to give it values and to test that these values are then used somewhere else. So let's review. We're creating some kind of mock forms authentication service, mock membership provider. Let's go look at the code here. Application name, return 0, return 0. Oh, damn. Oh, snap. So we have some kind of hard-coded stub membership provider, membership whatever, and one of the biggest problems that happen in tests is actually happening right here. What's the problem? The problem is that this fake thing here has hard-coded values built right into it. It's built right in. And what happens when it's built right in? Whoever is reading the test has no idea what's supposed to happen, why it's happening. The test is virtually unreadable. It's a magic test. There are a lot of things happening here. What should be really happening is that this fake provider, or the stub provider, should be returning values that were set by the test. So what I would eventually want to do is to say in my test, let's go here. I want to go back to the initial test. I would probably say maybe controller membership service, or get fake membership provider min password length equals 6. So what I would want to have is to have the test itself configure the fake membership provider so that whoever is reading the test understands what's supposed to happen and why am I getting a 6 here. Okay, so there should be no surprises to whoever is reading the test. And there are certainly many surprises. So when I get the account controller, I have a mock membership provider, which is really a stub. I have a mock forms authentication service, which is really a stub. I have account membership service, which probably is stub, and so on and so on and so on. And my bet here is that most of them are very, very much hard-coded. And that tells me one important thing. Whoever wrote these things is a beginner in the world of TDD, and they're certainly going the right way, but they have not taken the time to think about the maintainability and the readability of the tests. First of all, these things, these hard-coded stubs, can only be used for tests that have no need to change these things. What happens when you need new values? Are you going to go in and change the hard-coded values in those stubs? No, you're not going to do that. You're going to recreate them with different values, maybe, because that's what you're used to. And suddenly there's an explosion of classes in your test code, and you have no idea where it came from. But the basic principle is that if you can create something either dynamically or handwritten, but you set the values that it will return dynamically via properties or via some kind of mocking isolation framework, you make the test much more readable. And that's definitely an abuse of the handwritten stub idea because you're using it the wrong way. We have a mock HTTP context, which is, seriously, stop using the word mock. As you can see, I'm getting more and more annoyed as I'm going through the tests. I'm trying to remain calm because I have a wife and kid in the other room and they're trying to sleep. But here I am getting annoyed at your code. Now, I really appreciate the fact that you're writing tests, but if you're going to show these tests to people, you're going to teach them the wrong things. And you're teaching them how to write unmaintainable and unreadable test code, even though these tests are so simple. They're actually too simple. They're assuming too much. These tests that I've just looked at are just too simple. There is not enough data in them that tells the test user what's going to happen and why it's happening. Why is change password success true here? Change password post redirects on success. This is another example. How do I know that all pass, new pass should succeed? What's the difference here? How do I know that old pass is the correct password that's already existing? Many things here are just assumed to be known. And that's a great symbol about the fact that the team who wrote this, the person who wrote this, did not think about other people reading the test. Now, I'm not even talking about the fact that usually you don't want to change the view data directly. You want to have wrappers, strongly typed wrappers around it. Let's talk about something else. The fact that you have two asserts here in the test. Now, why are two asserts more problematic during tests? Well, one of the first reasons there is a problem here. If the first assert fails, the second one will never run, because the first one will throw an exception. So that's one of the main reasons you don't want to have multiple asserts in the test. It's because the first one who fails makes the other ones never run. And one of the nice things about tests is that even if one fails, other tests run. So you get a whole picture, what works, what doesn't. When it's all in the same test, you get a partial picture if it failed in the middle, and you don't see if the other asserts are running or not, and they're passing or not. Now, when you don't get a full picture, you may think that the bug is in one place, but it's really in the other place. It's like a patient coming to a doctor and says, "My hand hurts," but he doesn't tell him that he also has a heart attack, and so on. Yes, I know I'm kind of grim this way, but I am tired. Let's see if there's anything else interesting here. Same things here. Now, you can see that a lot of these tests are doing the same thing, expecting different results. 6 and a string here, 6 and a different string here, and so on. These would be perfect for using row tests, either with NUnit or MBUnit. But the fact is that Team System does not currently support the idea of row tests, where you have a test that can accept parameters here, and then you can actually use these as parameters and send multiple rows of the same parameters into the test, every time checking different things. So the test becomes a little more generic. There's a big problem here. And that the problem here is technological. Team System Test still does not support it. And that kind of sucks. Let's see if there's anything. So this is interesting. Constructor, and I'm not even talking about the names anymore. I talked about the names. The names are not that great. But constructor sets properties. Constructor of what? I have no idea. Which properties? I don't know. To which values? No idea. So someone just wrote the name of the test, and then they can go to lunch. Constructor sets properties. Forms authentication, new mock forms authentication. Stub. New account membership service. So you create the account controller with these two, and then you're asserting that the controller has the correct form of authentication, and that the membership service is indeed in the controller membership service. This is interesting because obviously someone said, I want to make sure that the way my stubs works. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Still, there's a problem with two asserts in the same test. I can see that, but I would name this test definitely differently. Controller constructor sets providers correctly. Now, what's the scenario? When called. That's the different scenario. Constructor sets properties to default values if you don't use them. So default values actually should say null. That's the default value. Login get. I don't know what to say about the name of this test. Seriously, problematic. Get account controller. Log on. Make sure the result is not null. That's amazing. Whoever wrote this test should get a Nobel Prize. I mean, seriously? You're not checking anything here. Just remove this test if you care about your readers. Or check something, for God's sakes. Just check. Not that it's not null. Check something that it's actually getting back something that's correct. What kind of result should the controller return? What kind of view? What's the name of the view? Is it the correct view? You can create an expected view and then assert that they're equal. Something. Login post redirects home if login successful but no return URL given. Well, the name is okay, but I really miss the underscores here. But I like the name. Controller, get account controller. And can you please remove the arrange act assert here? I mean, come on. Seriously, I got it. I mean, you had me at hello. Account controller, get account controller, result controller, log on. Some user could pass true, null. That's great. Root values. Login post redirects home if login successful but no return URL given. Oh, let's rename this. Come on. Log on. Log on. If login successful and URL given, redirects home. That's much better. But no return URL given. Result root values controller are equal to home, and result root value action is equal to index. That's better. That's better. At least it says something. Okay, I think we're kind of done here. I think that's enough for now. 30 minutes or something. Maybe I'll continue to review this in the next video, or I would love your suggestions. If you think you have code that you want me to review, tests that you want me to review, I would love to do it. Just send an email to the email specified in the video right now. I would love to look at them and maybe do a video on them. Thank you again, NerdDinner guys. You know, no hard feelings. This is just a review, and I wanted to help maybe teach some of the things that I think people should be knowing. You can read my blog at iserializable.com. My book should be coming out, artofunittesting.com. And that's it. Thank you very much, guys.